knowing how to interview is a very specific mask. And unfortunately, it's really hard to land a job being completely unmasked because job search people, like the HR people, the hiring managers, most managers in general, expect and have a belief around like the interview questions that there is a specific right and wrong way to answer them. Hey, neurodivergent creatives. It's me. And this should be coming out just before Christmas. So this topic is not about Christmas at all. This topic is about job searching because my partner is about to get his bachelor's degree, and I have been very excitedly looking at job opportunities for him to help him get his resume in shape. Some people may or may not know this about me, but I used to be a career counselor. When I was in grad school, I had a graduate assistantship, which means I worked and they gave me like $600 a month, which was enough to pay my car payment and maybe buy some groceries. But we don't need to talk about that. I got a job during grad school working in the Hiram College, which is a tiny little school in Northeast Ohio. It's beautiful there, honestly. And I loved the vibe there. I would have gone to school there. I'm not sure why I didn't. It was great. I digress. I worked at Hiram College in the Career Center. So I was the graduate assistant and I worked like very part-time, like 10 hours a week. And my primary role was helping students review their resumes and cover letters. And we also did a job shadowing program once a year. So when we did that, I would help students reach out to our alumni network and ask Hiram alums if they could do a day of job shadowing. And then they would, like write a paper about it or use that experience to sort of test out if a career aligned with what they wanted to do. With freshmen, I would tend to help them like think about different majors as opposed to resumes and stuff because they weren't really applying to internships and such like that. But the juniors and seniors were prepping their resumes. And so I was seeing a lot of resumes back in the day. And after that, I have done resumes on a freelance basis for the past 15 plus years. Wow, that feels like a long time. I guess 15-ish years. When did I graduate? 2012? Okay. So I started doing this resume thing in 2009. I graduated in 2011. Hooray! Welcome to math with me. Now you know how old I am. I'm 35. Almost 36, which I'm not excited about 36. That number feels too round. I don't know. I really like 35, and I feel like 37 is going to slap. I just like to skip the even years. Once again, I'm just talking about random shit. Back on topic. So I have been reviewing resumes professionally since 2009. And people have, like, I'll do a resume and they'll go do a job interview and they're like, I got the job. They loved my resume. And so I'm like, hell yeah, all right. So I know some shit about resumes. There's even a chapter in my book, The Gaslighting of the Millennial Generation, that walks you through how to write a resume, cover letter, and gives interview tips. Turns out I am very helpful at translating the job search and interview process for neurodivergent people because of my time in this sort of career arena. And also, it's another language. It's masking. Knowing how to interview is a very specific mask. And unfortunately, it's really hard to land a job being completely unmasked because job search people, like the HR people, the hiring managers, most managers in general, expect and have a belief around like the interview questions that there is a specific right and wrong way to answer them. And so in this episode, in honor of the fact that I have been digging through job descriptions and working on resumes and cover letters lately, I'm gonna translate some of these interview questions for you. And first thing I want to say, especially if you are a lady or of the assigned female at birth persuasion, regardless of your presentation now, you very likely have been socialized to not apply for a job unless you meet 100% of the requirements. That is not necessary. You can apply if you look at it and you're like, yeah, I could do 60% of that. I could do 75% of that. Even that's probably high. There is a statistic. Let me find the statistic. Hold on. Okay. Let's see. Studies have shown that women tend to apply for jobs only when they meet most, if not all, of the qualifications, whereas men often apply even if they meet only some of the qualifications. This phenomenon is often referred to as the confidence gap or confidence versus competence dilemma. Oh, it was 60%. Wow. Okay. So women apply for a job. This is a study conducted by Hewlett Packard. Women applied for a job only when they believed they met 100% of the qualifications, while men applied when they met about 60% of the qualifications. This suggests that women may hold themselves back from applying to positions they are qualified for due to a higher threshold of self-assessment. Oh, I love that phrase. A higher threshold of self-assessment. Because like we look at a list and we're like, okay, I do not have every single piece of this list. Therefore, I don't qualify. I'm not even going to bother. No. That's not what job descriptions are for. The company who is hiring needs a person to make that position go. And they have an outline of what that entails and what that person should know how to do. But they ask for the pie in the sky. If this person shows up and has literally all of these qualifications, it's going to be an 100% absolutely easy yes. What happens when they get 200 applicants or more? The job market is nuts. And some of these jobs, especially remote work, ever since 2020 and COVID, remote work has exploded, but also so has the competition because so many more people have access to find these remote jobs. I live in Ohio. If I want to apply to a job in California, I can. If I want to apply to a job in Vermont, I can. If I want to apply to a job in Iowa, I can. Used to be, you could only apply to jobs that were in your geographical area. Thus, much larger talent pool, which is great. But back to the point of if you have more than half of what they are looking for, throw your hat in the ring. And I know that I just said like, oh, so many people. Oh, it's so hard. Do it anyway, because everybody fucking else is. So let's apply for the jobs, okay? Also, I know I'm just going to say about rejection sensitive dysphoria right now. Is it dysphoria? Whatever. Rejection sensitivity. Applying to a job can feel very scary because there's a very high probability you're not going to get that job. I mean, it depends on the job. Sometimes there's a high probability you will get that job. If you have more than half the qualifications, make your case. Have the audacity to ask. You make your case in your cover letter. Cover letters, I think they get a bad rap. I think people are like, oh, I hate making cover letters. I don't know. I kind of like it. It can be very formulaic. So here is my formula for a cover letter, which is there's 3 main parts. Part 1, hi, I am Caitlin. This is how I found your job. I am applying for your job. Part 2 is details about your experience and how it fits the job. This is especially where you need to be creative and also concise if you are doing a career pivot. So for instance, when I pivoted from higher education, which is my master's degree is in higher ed administration and student personnel. I'm a life coach and an author. I'm not doing anything in higher education and student personnel. Also, fun fact, I've met at least a handful of other higher ed people who became life coaches. Kind of like that about us. We're like, I just want to help people, so I'm gonna. Okay, so part 2 is where you start talking about like your qualifications and your experience. So what you want to do here is look at the job description. They are going to say words and phrases in a particular way. You want to show that you read the job description by putting those same words and phrases into your cover letter. So if they say, communicate with internal and external stakeholders, that is a fluffy thing. That means you talk to people within your own company and also outside clients. Honestly, if you ever are like looking at a job description and you need job to human regular speech translations, I feel like that is a service I could provide amazingly. So just, I don't know, email it to me and let me translate it for you. Sounds fun. I should do that. Let me have 14 ideas about things that I could do with this. Okay. So in your cover letter, then, you could say, I have experience managing both internal and external clients. So you could say that. You get the internal, external. You could say stakeholders, both within and outside the company. Like, you don't want to just copy and paste their exact phrase, but you want to showcase that you can do the thing that they want. So I wanted to go off on like a thing about, it's like Tinder. Like, if somebody says they love somebody who's outdoorsy, you want to open with a line about like, I love to go hiking, but probably don't go hiking on your first date because that's dangerous. Don't do that. But it is sort of like a flirtation. It is the beginning of a relationship. When you match on a dating app and then start a conversation, that is similar to when you send in your resume and then the company is like, hey, we would love to interview you. Great. Now you're going to sit down at dinner and get to know each other. And on a first date, you might ask things about, how's your relationship with your family? Do you want kids? Things like deal breakers to get out of the way, right? The application and the interview is the place to find the deal breakers. So you need to know what your deal breakers are. If you want a remote only position and the job description says remote position, and then in the interview, they're like, yeah, it's flexible. We have a hybrid location. So if you could come in 3 days a week, that's really what we're looking for. That is a deal breaker. And you can say, actually, I'm not. Should we end this interview now? Because I'm not willing to commute 3 days a week. I'm looking for a remote only position. This protects you and also lets them know, like, you're not fucking around and you're also not going to waste their time or waste your own time. So know your deal breakers going in. And then communicate what you have in common in the cover letter. So I'm actually going to go look at one that I've written. So this is a bit of a career pivot. It is from logistics to database management. So we are going from a logistics company, and this is an application for a museum. So what I wrote here was, within my last role, I became the de facto tech lead for our teams, as well as serving on special committees to improve our systems operations. I routinely oversaw system upgrades and deployment of new programs, and I also provided training and troubleshooting for our department to fully onboard the various software and programs. This says, I know that my job listing is going to say whatever customer service thing, whatever the job title is. And I am telling you that I went above and beyond that and also was the only guy who could fix the internet. So I've done IT. You need to translate that for them because they want to see how the experience that you have is going to apply to their job. Part 3 of your cover letter. And I know that this is not super in-depth because it's just a podcast episode, so you should buy my book and read my chapter. It's chapter 4, Millennials Are Killing the Workplace. Thanks. If you get a job with my advice, you have to tell me. That's our obligation now. You have to. Thing 3 is you're just like, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to hearing from you. I can be reached via email at such and such or phone at such and such to further discuss my qualifications. That is just the sort of dance of the cover letter. Now, there's also been a rise of things called a resu letter, where it's a bit of a blend between resume cover letter. So you can start in with the same sort of paragraph structure. Dear hiring manager, I'm writing to apply for the role you listed on Indeed.com. I'm so excited for the chance to work for a company that prioritizes XYZ thing from your mission. It's also, they like it if you go to their website and look at their mission, vision, values, and then put that in your cover letter. Pro tip. But then you can break it up and put in some bullet points. You can be like, in my role at such and such, I have been responsible for several ongoing projects, including, and then list your experience that directly relates to the job listing in bullet points. This is great for easier readability. And it's also great for filling out the space on the page if it's a little more entry level, or if you're just coming out of college or you're making that career pivot and you don't have a 20-year career to detail in your page-long cover letter. So the bullet points system allows you to get a little bit more space filled up without it looking super white spacey and you didn't have anything to say. Okay, that's basically cover letters. And again, much more on that in that chapter of my book. And I can even Honestly, I can post excerpts of that on my blog for anybody who's interested. So just let me know in the comments or shoot me a DM on the Instagrams and we'll talk about it. I actually really love career stuff. I used to really geek out on this. And as my career and just sort of general vibe has shifted over the past several years as I've become a coach and lean more into writing and creative coaching, I haven't done the career stuff as much, but I still really enjoy it. And if somebody around me is like, oh, I need a new job, I'm like, oh my God, can I help you? Can I help you find a job? Because I kind of love it. It feels very matchmaky. And I also really get to hype people up. They're like, no, I'm not qualified for that. And I'm like, yes, huh? And then I can show them 15 ways that their current experience actually is exactly qualified for that job, but they didn't realize it. And this is where the neurodivergence comes in. Because autistic people, especially, we're so literal. Like a job description is going to say, must be able to lift 50 pounds. And an autistic person is going to be like, why? I guess, let me go see if I can lift 50 pounds. They just need to know that you can like shove a box full of printer paper around when the printer is out of paper. Like you're probably not going to actually have to lift 50 pounds. If it's for like a vet tech position, yeah, you're going to have to move some doggies, you know, or like hold a pony still while it gets its vaccinations. Sometimes, yeah, for sure. Construction, you're going to need to carry things. You need to be strong. But in general, when they list stuff like that, those are just like very normal prescriptive things that go into a job listing. So they're going to ask you something like, tell us about yourself. Oh my God, what an open-ended nightmare. What do you want to know? Do you want to know like the first time I wondered about my gender identity? Do you want to know my favorite TV shows? Do you want to know what I sang in the shower this morning? No, they want to know about your career. They want to know what brought you to this job. So when you get the tell us about yourself thing, I am a fan of putting a little personal touch on it, you know, because you're not just here to work, you're also here to work with other human beings, right? So when I did interview people, love to throw in a question like, what's your favorite type of cuisine? Because I knew if somebody liked Mexican food, I would be like, oh, hell yeah, me too. We go out for Mexican food all the time. And if they were like, I love Italian food, then I'm like, oh, that's awesome. What's your favorite dish? Like, none of those answers are going to disqualify someone from a job. But interviewers will put like personality type questions and just sort of personal preference questions into an interview. One, to kind of calm the situation down because it feels very formal, right? It feels like a little scary and like, oh, if I mess this up, I'm going to die in the gutter. Jobs are hard. Getting a job is hard because it sucks to have to go into a situation and be like, hello, I will now tell you a bunch of great things about me in exchange for the safety of a living wage, we hope. Okay, there's a power imbalance here. It's hard. And it's extra hard when they're asking you questions like, tell me about your strengths and weaknesses. And you can't be like, well, my right knee gets sore when it rains. Like, that's not what they want to know. So let's talk about the strengths and weaknesses question, okay? The strengths, how about something that you are like freaky good at? So like I can take literally anything and make a functional spreadsheet out of it in about 20 minutes. I'm just really good with numbers and data and planning. That's a great strength, especially if it's relevant to the job. You do want to stay relevant to the job. Now, the weakness question, there is like a process to this. And the traditional way to answer the weakness question is to say a weakness, but actually make it a strength. So you would say something like, oh, well, my weakness is that I just spend too much time working on a project to make sure it's totally perfect. That feels like what they want to hear. Like they want to hear that you like to go above and beyond. I hate those answers because they are only designed to elicit that fake answer. Like this question just kind of sucks, in my opinion. So what you want to do when they ask you about your weaknesses is to say something that you really truly have identified as a weakness. Go to a past job that you had and identify something that you did not do well. Oh, when I first started working in this field, I really had trouble with whatever the thing was. And throughout my experience, I have been able to improve on that by implementing this thing and this thing and this thing. So let's say the thing was that you weren't very prompt about replying to emails. So you say, my weakness is that when I'm really busy, I lose track of my email inbox and I don't remember to check it frequently. And throughout my career, I've worked on this so that I have an item on my calendar that goes off 3 times a day to remind me to check my email when I get to the office in the morning, when I get back from lunch, and an hour before the day ends. And those are my prime email times. This has allowed me to blah, 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 a good outcome. So we're not lying. We're not wrapping up a weakness inside a treat like we're giving a dog a pill. You're being very honest that this was a weakness of yours and how you improved it, which is great. You don't want to go in there and just be like, I hate capitalism. First of all, that's not a weakness. It's a strength. And I love that for you. But that's not going to go over well in an interview. And we do still have to exist within this system, alas. If they ask you, like, walk me through your resume, I think that's pointless because they should read it. But you can use this opportunity to highlight things that aren't on your resume, which you can also do in the cover letter. So, like in your cover letter, you can say, above and beyond my resume, I have also done blah, 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 because you want to keep your resume short and to the point. And then in the cover letter, you can expand a little bit on it. And then also in the interview, you can expand a little bit on it. So this is a great place to say, yes, well, you can see from 2017 to 2021, I worked for Awesome Stuff Company. And what I really liked about that job was that this part isn't on my resume, but I got to lead a special team for team building. And so I was able to plan events and activities once a quarter for our team to go do something fun together and just get to know each other. And it turned out that that was a really rewarding part of my job. That answer makes so much sense because that's not something you put on a resume when you're trying to just get in the door, but that does show a lot about how you operate within a team. So if they ask you, oh, tell me a little bit about your career so far. Tell me about your resume. Highlight something that is great about you that doesn't really make sense for the resume, which is for like facts and figures. Okay, these questions where they're like, tell me a time that you did, example, worked in a team, curated an event. I don't know if curate is the term there, but depending on the job that you are applying for, they could ask you something like relevant to that. So let's say you are going to, like this job that I was looking at, organize the database for the museum's collections, which means that like you have to know where everything in the museum is, if it's on loan somewhere, yada, yada. So one of those interview questions would very likely be, tell us about a time that you managed a collections database. Cool. And now you can take from your relevant experience. And because this is like a career pivot, and there's no specific experience in collections database, you bring in something similar. So you're like, okay, what is the time that I organized stuff around the items that we had? And so you can talk about maybe an internship experience or a volunteer experience. Honestly, if you need to get some kind of specific experience, ask your network, people you know, and offer to do sort of like a volunteer-based project for them just to sort of get the ropes of that aspect of the job. That also will look sort of like above and beyond during the interview, where if you're like, well, when I started trying to pivot into IT after a customer service career, I reached out to a friend of mine who works at such and such company, and they allowed me to come in and do a part-time internship in the IT department where I handled the onboarding of this software because I was familiar with it and my friend got me in there. So like, it doesn't have to be relevant, like paid experience for you to draw on it. Work history, relevant experience draws from paid, unpaid, household. I have done a lot of resumes for stay-at-home moms who are returning to the workforce. No, I'm sorry, you managed a household. You monitored inventory. You managed appointments. Literally, any stay-at-home mother could go into executive assistant work and smash that. And anybody who's been in an abusive relationship could go into PR immediately. because you know how to spin shit and be like, everything is fine. This relationship is amazing. Look here. Look over here. Ha 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 ha. Don't look over there. That's what PR is. PR is like when you get a question that's like, oh, your eyes look dead inside. You're like, no, I'm just tired because look, we were up putting together this amazing desk in our new office. Don't look over there at the truth of my dead eyes. Like, it's good. PR. Oh, this is actually a really good one. How do you handle pressure or stressful situations? I got this question in an interview, but he did not ask it like this. This is the VP in the interview with me. I think at the time he was a director and he eventually got promoted to VP. So I'm there interviewing with the person who would be my manager and then her boss, the director of our department. And he goes, so during this interview, you've been like this. And he like draws his hand in a straight line, very smooth, calm. And he goes, what makes you go like this? And then he waves his hand up and down like the wave of an ocean or like a sine graph. And I'm like, oh, he wants to know like what I do when I'm mad. And that can be a really hard question to come up with an answer on the fly for. So I want you to prepare for this because they want to know how you react when shit goes sideways, as it does in any corporate job. Somebody's going to give you something to do at 9 a.m. and then at 2 p.m. they will ask you for something completely different and you will have to scrap all that and not scream. So what I said here was I gave an example from the prior job I had, the job that I was leaving to come to this one, and talked about there was a product design that I thought compromised the integrity of the brand. And I spoke to my director about it. I just went to her and I was like, I don't think we should move forward with this product. I don't think that it represents our brand values for these reasons, yada, yada. And like, yeah. And then I went for a walk and he probably wanted something like a little more volatile, but I'm not really a volatile person when there's an authority figure around because the little thing in my brain is like, it's not safe to be that vulnerable emotionally near your boss. Depends on the boss. I've had bosses that I had absolute meltdowns with. 2 bosses, 3 bosses. My female bosses have been amazing and my male bosses have been terrible. There's commentary there. The female bosses also get hella burnt out. There's commentary there too. Okay, so for this question, if they ask how you respond to stress and like pressure, think deadlines. And if you need to, like go to college. Be like, well, in college, when I had a bunch of things due at once and it was finals, like here's how I managed it. I get really meticulous and I plan out every single second of my day. And it's probably not the healthiest, but I manage it. You can be like, I have a caffeine addiction. Maybe don't tell them that like you have to go home and drink a bottle of wine every day because that's going to be a red flag. But really think about that in advance. And if you have specific things that have happened to you, like under pressure at a job, and you want some help workshopping that, just leave a comment or send me a DM. I would be happy to chat about it with you and find a way to sort of translate that into neurotypical job interview speak. And at this point, I'm going to wrap this up because I'm at about like my max time for a podcast episode. I know we have short attention spans these days. So if you have stuck around, thanks. And let me know your questions because I love talking about job searches and career stuff. It is one of my special interests and not one that I get to flex a lot. So hell yeah. Neurodivergent career tips. Part 1 of question mark. Who knows how often I'm going to do these, but ask questions so I can answer them. Okay. I love you. Goodbye.